It all started with one question that turned into a worldwide anthem. How you gonna act like that? Tyrese Gibson sang those words back in 2002, and they became the sound of every broken heart, every failed relationship, every "I gave you everything" moment. But years later, life threw the same question right back at him. Not from a woman, not from a song, but from the entire world. Because on September 22nd, 2025, the man who once sang about loyalty found himself standing in the middle of a police raid with flashing lights outside his Los Angeles mansion and his 80-year-old grandmother being taken into custody beside him. You won't believe how fast life can turn when destiny takes an unexpected turn. It was a regular morning, quiet, calm, until the sound of boots and shouting officers broke that peace. Body cameras were rolling, dogs were barking, and Tyrese's name was being shouted like a crime suspect. The police claimed they were investigating reports about his Cane Corso dogs being involved in a violent incident. But here is the shocking part. Standing right there in the middle of it all was his grandmother, the woman who had raised him when his parents couldn't, confused and terrified as officers led her away for questioning. This was the same woman who had been his real ride or die long before fame, before the money, before Hollywood. The same woman who had protected him from the chaos of Watts now stood surrounded by chaos again, only this time it was her grandson's world falling apart. But this is where it gets interesting. While the internet exploded with memes and jokes, calling it Tyrese's downfall, no one was talking about how he got here. The world saw headlines, but they didn't see the story behind them. They didn't see the boy from one of Los Angeles's toughest neighborhoods who climbed his way to fame with nothing but a voice and a dream. They didn't see the man who fought the music industry just to keep real singing alive. Let me tell you, the raid was just one part of a much bigger story. Long before the fame, long before anyone called him Roman Pierce from Fast and Furious or Jody from Baby Boy, Tyrese was just a kid trying to survive. Born December 30th, 1978 in Watts, he grew up surrounded by addiction. His mother was battling alcoholism for nearly 27 years. His father was lost to drugs and alcohol too. The world didn't give him a chance. But destiny had other plans, because when his parents couldn't stand, his grandmother stepped up. She became his mother, his protector, and his safe place. She made sure he got to school, kept him away from the streets, and taught him what strength looked like when everything else fell apart. Every night, when the noise outside got too loud, she would turn on the radio. The sound of Marvin Gaye, Stevie Wonder, Donny Hathaway, and Teddy Pendergrass filled the small house. Those songs were more than music, they were medicine. His mother, still battling addiction, would sit in the corner drinking, but even through her pain, the music played on. That sound, that soul, that emotion, it all soaked into Tyrese's heart. That was his real education. What makes this story different is that R&B didn't just influence him, it raised him. It became his escape, his therapy, his destiny. Then one day, everything changed. A young Tyrese discovered he had a voice. Not just any voice, but one that carried pain and power at the same time. The kind that made people stop and listen. The kind that came from struggle, not from studio tricks. When he was 19, he got a chance to sing in a Coca-Cola commercial. One moment, one opportunity, and destiny took another unexpected turn. That commercial changed everything. Soon after, he signed a deal and released his debut single, Sweet Lady, in 1998. The world instantly noticed. That voice, smooth, emotional, pure, hit radio stations everywhere. You won't believe how fast he went from the streets of Watts to Billboard's top charts. Women adored him. Men respected him. R&B had found its new voice. But here is the craziest part. Fame didn't fix his pain. Even as Sweet Lady became a hit, Tyrese never forgot where he came from. He still visited his grandmother, still looked out for her, still reminded people that she was his reason for making it. And when he released How You Gonna Act Like That in 2002, it wasn't just a breakup song. It was his way of asking the world, how can people change so fast? How can loyalty disappear overnight? That song wasn't written just for relationships. It was about everything he'd seen growing up. The people who promised love and left, the family that broke, the friends that switched sides when fame came. But destiny wasn't done twisting his story, because just when everything seemed perfect, the music, the fame, the success, Tyrese started to notice something dark behind the spotlight. The music industry he loved wasn't the same anymore. Tyrese had tasted fame, but fame came with a price no one warned him about. The spotlight that once felt warm now burned. Everywhere he went, people wanted the star, not the man. The record labels wanted hits that could trend, not songs that could heal. But Tyrese wasn't built for shortcuts. He came from the kind of pain that made him chase honesty, not algorithms. Let me tell you, this is how the fight for real R&B began, quietly, behind the cameras, when no one was paying attention. By 2013, Tyrese had already proven himself. He had platinum albums, hit singles, and blockbuster movies under his belt. But the music world was changing faster than anyone could keep up. The radio wasn't playing real singers anymore, only auto-tuned voices with catchy hooks. That's when Tyrese did something bold, something no one expected. He decided to join forces with two other R&B legends, Tank and Genuine. Together, they created a supergroup called TGT, a trio that promised to bring back the soul in soul music. You won't believe the amount of excitement when fans heard about it. Real voices, real emotion, real music. It sounded like the rebirth of an entire genre. When their album Three Kings dropped, it was everything R&B fans had been craving: smooth harmonies, raw emotion, pure passion. But here's the shocking part: the industry didn't care. The same record labels that had once begged Tyrese for love songs suddenly looked away. The same radio stations that played Sweet Lady nonstop now ignored Three Kings. It was as if real singing had become invisible. "This is where it gets interesting," Tyrese later said. "We gave them real music and they turned their backs on it." The project that was supposed to save R&B became another painful reminder that the world had changed. After that, things got dark. For over 2 years, from 2022 to 2024, Tyrese had no record deal at all. No label wanted to sign him. Not because his voice had faded. His voice was still flawless, still powerful, but because his TikTok numbers weren't high enough. Yes, you heard that right. The same man who gave the world Sweet Lady and How You Gonna Act Like That couldn't get a deal because he wasn't viral. Let that sink in. He said it himself in interviews. "I'm not here to chase TikTok fame. I'm here to make grown music." But the industry didn't care about grown music anymore. They wanted trends, short clips, and filters. That's when Tyrese started speaking out, calling out the record labels, the executives, and the system. You won't believe how brutally honest he became. He told them, "I'm making music for adults, people who've lived, loved, and lost. If you're 16 and making TikToks at my concert, security's removing you." He wasn't joking. Tyrese wanted his art to mean something again. But destiny took another unexpected turn. While the world ignored his music, his personal life began to fall apart. In 2017, Tyrese married Samantha Lee, a union that seemed like a fairy tale at first. She was smart, beautiful, strong, everything he thought he needed. For a while, things looked perfect. They posted pictures, gave interviews, talked about family and love. But behind the smiles, cracks were forming. By 2020, Samantha filed for divorce, and what followed was one of the most painful chapters of Tyrese's life. Here's the craziest part. When the court papers arrived, they included a demand for $20,000 a month in child support for their 8-month-old daughter. $20,000 a month. The same man who once sang about loyalty was now being treated like a wallet. Let me tell you, that number broke him in ways no heartbreak ever could. He said, it wasn't about family anymore. It was about business. Samantha later went on to call him a poor businessman, publicly questioning his decisions. Every interview, every headline, it all hit him like another punch. Then came the breaking point, the moment that the internet turned into a circus. A video surfaced in 2021 of Tyrese crying uncontrollably, saying, "What more do you want from me?" over and over. Social media didn't hold back. Memes, jokes, endless mocking. The same fans who once sang his songs now laughed at his pain. But here is the shocking part. Tyrese had no idea that video even existed until months later. At that time, he was under heavy psychiatric medication because of the divorce stress. He'd been prescribed anxiety medicine, and the side effects were brutal. For 4 months, he didn't even know what people were laughing at. When he finally saw it, the humiliation was unbearable. Yet, instead of hiding, Tyrese spoke up. He admitted to taking Ativan for anxiety, talked openly about therapy and mental health, and reminded the world that Black men cry too. That line became one of the most powerful things he ever said. You won't believe how many men thanked him for saying it. It was raw, it was painful, but it was real. After the heartbreak and the backlash, Tyrese thought things might finally calm down. But life had other plans. The same industry that once ignored him suddenly wanted him back, not because they believed in him, but because controversy was profitable. You won't believe how quickly the same people who turned their backs on him started calling again once his pain went viral. It was almost like they wanted to feed off his tragedy. But here's where it gets interesting. Tyrese didn't run toward the attention this time. He stood still, silent, and watched who came closer for love and who came closer for headlines. In 2023, Tyrese began to rebuild, not with money or fame, but with purpose. He launched his own independent label, deciding he would never again beg for a deal or approval. I'll sing for the people who still care about real music, he said, and he meant it. Without a label, without big promotion, he released songs straight from his home studio. Soulful, emotional, unfiltered. Fans began to notice. Slowly, the same internet that had mocked him started to root for him again. But the craziest part, Tyrese wasn't chasing forgiveness, he just wanted peace. That peace, however, didn't come easy. His feud with his ex-wife Samantha kept resurfacing online. Interviews, podcasts, court updates, the drama refused to die down. Every time he tried to move forward, another clip or comment would drag him back into chaos. Let me tell you, this is how fame becomes a trap. The world watches your worst moments on repeat while your best ones get ignored. Tyrese once said they don't want healing. They want headlines. And he was right. Samantha appeared on a podcast saying she left because she didn't feel safe emotionally. Tyrese fired back, accusing her of using his fame for clout. The story got messier with every passing week, and people couldn't stop watching. But here's the shocking part. Deep down, Tyrese still prayed for her. In interviews, he said, "She's the mother of my child. I want her to be happy, but I'm not built to be broken forever." That line hit millions of people differently. It wasn't anger anymore. It was acceptance. Tyrese began to sound like a man who had finally made peace with pain. As if destiny wasn't finished testing him, another tragedy came knocking. His close friend and Fast and Furious co-star Paul Walker had already passed away years earlier, but the 10th anniversary of Paul's death reopened wounds Tyrese thought had healed. He shared an emotional tribute online, breaking down as he spoke about the bond they shared, how Paul was more than a co-star, he was like a brother. The world saw Tyrese cry again, but this time it wasn't mocked, it was respected. Fans began to realize maybe this man wasn't dramatic, maybe he was just real. From that moment, his perspective changed completely. Tyrese started visiting schools, prisons, and churches, talking about emotional healing and fatherhood. He told young men, don't be afraid to feel, don't be afraid to cry. Real men cry. You won't believe how many young people began following him, not as a celebrity, but as a mentor. The same voice that once sang about heartbreak now spoke about faith, forgiveness, and finding strength after pain. What makes this story different is that Tyrese never pretended to be perfect. He didn't hide behind fame, he didn't fake smiles, and he didn't run from his scars. He wore them proudly as proof that survival was possible. His honesty became his armor. People who once scrolled past his songs started listening again, not because of trends, but because his music felt like therapy in a world full of noise. Then came a twist no one saw coming. Tyrese announced that he was working on a gospel-inspired R&B project, a mix of love, pain, and faith. It was his way of bringing the sacred and the soulful together. He said, God gave me this voice not to be famous, but to be a vessel. And once again, people started believing in him. It was as if the universe had given him a second chance, not the one he wanted, but the one he needed. But destiny took another unexpected turn. Just when Tyrese was finding peace, rumors began spreading online about a supposed new relationship, one that people claimed was just for publicity. The gossip blogs ran wild, dissecting every photo, every caption, every smile. Tyrese, instead of denying or confirming, stayed quiet. For the first time in years, he didn't respond to the noise. He simply said, I'm not here to prove anything to anyone anymore. That silence spoke louder than any interview ever could. Tyrese had entered a new chapter, not as the heartthrob, not as the meme, but as the man who had walked through every storm and was still standing. He learned that sometimes peace isn't found in applause, but in solitude. And as he began working on what he called his most personal album yet, fans knew this was not the end of Tyrese Gibson's story. By 2025, Tyrese had transformed from a man broken by life into one rebuilt by faith. The pain, the losses, the ridicule, all of it had shaped him into someone the world could finally understand. But here's the shocking part. His comeback didn't happen on a red carpet or an award stage. It happened in silence, inside a small studio where it was just him, his mic, and his memories. He called it Beautiful Pain Volume 2, an album that would be his final message to the world about love, loss, and redemption. You won't believe how different his energy was now. Gone was the desperate tone, gone was the need to prove anything. This was Tyrese at peace, not with the world, but with himself. I used to chase validation, he said in one of his live sessions. Now I just chase healing. Those words struck millions of his followers because they came from a man who had seen it all: fame, failure, fortune, and forgiveness. The album wasn't flashy. There were no big label promotions, no auto-tuned hits, no choreographed music videos, just raw emotion. Each track sounded like a diary entry written at 3 a.m. when no one was watching. He sang about his mother, his daughter, his lost marriage, and even the night he cried on camera. But instead of pain, there was grace in his voice. He turned every scar into a lyric and every heartbreak into harmony. That's what made this story different. Tyrese didn't hide from his past, he sang through it. Then, destiny took another unexpected turn. The album went viral. Not because of marketing, but because of meaning. Fans around the world started sharing clips, calling his music the soundtrack of healing. R&B legends praised it, saying it reminded them of the days when songs still had soul. Suddenly, the same industry that once rejected him was knocking on his door again. But Tyrese didn't rush to open it. He knew better now. He said, I don't need a deal to be real. And that one line became a movement online. Let me tell you, this is how life tests you. It gives you back everything you lost, just to see if you'll still want it. Tyrese had the chance to sign major contracts again, but this time he walked away. He chose ownership over attention, peace over pressure. Instead of chasing awards, he started mentoring younger artists who wanted to stay true to themselves. He taught them about the dangers of fame and the beauty of authenticity. As he stood on stage one night performing Sweet Lady, the song that started it all, he paused midway and looked up. The crowd was singing louder than ever. Tears filled his eyes, not because of sadness, but because of gratitude. He whispered, "I made it through the fire." That moment said it all. The world had finally stopped laughing and started listening. And here's the craziest part. After everything, Tyrese didn't end his journey with a goodbye. Instead, he left his fans with a message. Don't run from your pain, turn it into purpose. Because one day, what almost destroyed you will become the reason someone else survives. That single quote became legendary, shared, printed, and even tattooed by fans who saw themselves in his story. So, in the end, Tyrese Gibson's legacy wasn't just about music or movies, it was about resilience. About a man who refused to let life define him, who turned his tears into testimony. He had walked through betrayal, heartbreak, public humiliation, and loss, yet came out stronger, wiser, and more spiritual than ever before. The world once mocked him for crying, but now those same tears became proof that he was real. Because sometimes the strongest thing a man can do is feel. And that's how Tyrese Gibson, the singer, the actor, the fighter, the survivor, rewrote his story. Not for fame, not for applause, but for truth. He fell, he healed, and he rose again, reminding everyone watching that pain isn't the end, it's the beginning of something beautiful.